Tiptoe through the tulips. You know, that song always really confused me, Russ.
Why is that?
Well, because have you ever, I mean, you've grown tulips, right? We've grown tulips.
Yeah.
Why would you want to tiptoe through them?
So you don't break them. They're very fragile.
Yeah, but they also grow really close together. I'm not sure anybody could actually tiptoe through them.
Well, they grow them a lot in Holland.
Yes, but you know where else they grow them a lot?
Where?
Here in Racine.
Oh.
Absolutely. And today, folks, we're going to be talking about gardening and the flowers that are going to work here if you live in this area. Now, we're not going to cover every single kind of flower.
No, we're just going to do the popular ones, ones that can deal with our climate.
Absolutely, because it gets a little bit chilly here and not all flowers love our climate. So let's dive into that today, right after this.
Yeah. Here we go.
So welcome back to our channel.
Yeah, so today we're going to be digging into the world of gardening.
Digging, that's a really bad pun, Russ. But if you do find value in this content, do us a favor and click like, subscribe, turn on that notification bell so you don't miss any of our content. And hopefully you'll find some value in this today. So you're going to put up some of these pictures, aren't you?
Yeah, I'll put up some pictures of the...
as we talk about these. So first of all, we're going to talk about like what are the best flowers to be planting in the spring. Now, of course, there's always the perennials. Perennials are very popular. We're going to talk about that for a minute here. Perennials are very, very popular here in Wisconsin because they don't have a lot of maintenance. And there's some that are really hardy to this area, like lilacs and hydrangeas. We see those everywhere. Roses as well, like rose bushes and things like that. They seem to, in fact, I have a rose bush out back that he hates because it does really well. It has almost no sun. It gets almost no sun, and yet it flourishes like crazy. And he hates it because if he's mowing the lawn and gets stabbed with the rose bush.
I get thorns in me all the time.
Yep. So those are some of the more popular perennials. There's all sorts of other ones as well. But let's talk about some of the other popular, some of these that we're going to talk about are perennial, but most of them are to be planted in the spring.
Yeah, so a good one to start off with is the daylilies.
Daylilies, yeah.
So they're tough. They return every year.
Yep. Speaking of perennials.
Some stunning blooms. They really look good. They're easy to grow, needing minimal care, and they can handle both sun and shade.
Which is really important because we also have a lot of trees here in Wisconsin. So having plants that can also handle shade is great. In fact, most of the plants that are hardy for this area don't like full sun all the time.
No. And most people, they've got smaller yards. They don't have the space. You know, you could grow these next to your garage where they are in shade sometimes.
Yep.
And, you know, or against the house. So
or up against a fence even. Like a lot of people like to plant around the perimeter of their backyard as like a beauty show almost.
So half of the day they're going to be in shade and these will thrive there. So they're good. Price-wise, they're between $5 and $15.
Depending on the variety, of course.
Yeah.
So the variety of them, I mean, obviously there's, you know, here's a picture of them and that's what a daylily looks like. And if you like that, well, then that's great. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about lilies, which is, I think, really ironic that I got assigned to do lilies. You got daylilies, I got lilies. To be honest, though, both of those I can't handle.
No.
I cannot handle lilies at all. When I was living in the UK, I got sick and I was in the hospital for about a week after having a surgery that took care of it. And somebody was delivered a big, huge bouquet of lilies. And now, because I was sick at the time, now I can't stand the smell of lilies. But
it surprises me. There's a lot of people that have that aversion to lilies. They don't like the smell.
Interesting, because I never felt that way before that time. But because I was sick and there was this huge thing, and because in England they have wards and not regular private rooms, this person, their lilies.
Yeah, when I've spoken to Julie, our favourite florist,
Yeah.
I've spoken to her about it, and she said, "Oh, we've got some lilies in." I said, "No,
No,
can't have
no,
lilies."
no lilies for Kimberly. No, never.
And I explained why. She says, "Oh, yeah, there's a lot of people like that."
Interesting.
Yeah.
However, I will say if they're outside, they don't bother me as much because when they're out in the fresh air, as long as it's not a huge amount of them, like, all grouped together, they don't have as strong of a scent as when they're trapped in a building. And so lilies are really great because they can be planted as bulbs, and you can plant them either in the fall or the spring.
Yep.
So if you didn't plant any lilies last fall, you can still plant them in the spring and they'll come up later, which is nice. But they love sun, and they love well-drained soil. So the well-drained soil part is kind of important because here in Wisconsin, we have a lot of sand in our soil, which it helps it drain really well.
Yeah.
So it doesn't need lilies do not want a lot of moisture underneath them. Otherwise, the bulbs and things go rotten. So they love the sun and well-drained soil. And the prices for them, they start at only about $3 a bulb, which is really cheap.
Yeah, really good.
But of course, the more special varieties, they do go for more expensive money. But still, $3 for a lily. That means you could get 10 of them.
Stunning, don't they?
And they do have they're really tall, and they do come up really nicely. And I will say that means for $30 to $50, you can easily plant like 10 of them in your yard and not have to think about them again. Because again, they are perennial. That once you plant them, you don't have to worry about them.
Yeah.
So that's kind of great. Yeah.
So next one, we're going to be talking about creeping phlox.
Phlox, like flocks of geese or
No,
birds?
it's spelled Phlox.
And this is what it looks like.
Yeah, so it's perfect for ground cover.
Mm-hmm.
It's an early bloomer, adds colour in spring.
Yep.
It's hardy and likes full sun to partial shade.
So this is actually really good to plant, and then before your other flowers come up, it will like cover the ground and make it so it kind of helps you to avoid having to do mulch.
Yeah.
Because it covers the ground so well that it means that it also keeps the weeds down, which is another great thing about phlox that people don't really know. So
yeah, and you can find packs of them from like $10 up.
Right.
So $10 to $20.
That's pretty inexpensive.
Yeah.
So pretty much what we're talking about here. And then, of course, one of the annuals that you see every spring here in Wisconsin is pansies. And we don't mean pansies like as in, people who don't, pansies. We're going to reshoot that part.
Yeah, we are.
So pansies come in all sorts of different colors. And I mean, my favorite are the purpley bluish color ones, but then I'm kind of partial to purples and blues generally. But I really do like them. When you have pansies mixed in with yellow tulips, I think that looks absolutely gorgeous.
Oh, yeah.
That's like so pretty because then you have the purples and yellows. And of course, the pansies themselves in the center have a little bit of that yellow sometimes. And so pansies are a great annual. They are so hardy. They do well throughout our winters. So even though they're annuals, they are great for spring, for colors. They do really well even in the spring when it's a bit colder, because it does get cold here in the spring. If you watched our video last week about weather, you would know about this. So go back and see the weather one. Pansies are great for that. They have lots of different colors. I mean, you can get pink, you can get white, you can get purple, you can get blue.
I love the purple and white ones.
You do. You like those. You like the variegated ones. And that's the other thing is that pansies are not just in one single color or even one single color on a plant. You get variegated pansies, which have multiple colors on one plant, which is incredible. But I don't particularly like the variegated personally. I like the solid color. I just like mixing different colors together. And they are really, really pretty. But you can get seedlings and you can get packs of them for like $3 to $7. Yeah. So if you pre-seed them and early on, then you've got tons and tons and tons of them. It's incredible. So,
and last but not least is the marigold.
And you know what? I don't like marigolds either. But they are incredibly popular.
You're very hard to please with flowers, aren't you?
No, it's actually it comes down to marigolds. It's the coloration. I've never liked orange. And to me, the yellow of a marigold seems more like an orange than a yellow to me. I'm not very hard to please. I love tulips, I love daffodils, I love roses, I love hydrangeas, but I do tend more towards liking things that are blues in color.
Yeah.
So blues and purples are
But
my
marigolds,
favorites.
I mean, they are bright colours, and they're great in summer because
They
they
are.
love sunny spots. They love
They
the
do.
sunshine.
They do. So they do great
So,
like on the front of a house.
Yep. And seed packets are very economical. Probably one of
Absolutely.
the cheaper of all the flowers because they only cost between $1 and $3 a packet.
And you get a ton
know.
of flowers from $1 to $3. So
Yeah.
if you're on a budget, then and you like marigolds, then go for it because that's going to save you a ton of money.
Yeah.
So they are really, really nice. But you know what? Not only should we be talking about the types of flowers, and of course there's loads of other flowers as well. And in fact, if you know a flower that you would like better, or that you live in the Racine area or southeastern Wisconsin, and you want to drop that flower in the chat, we'll validate whether that is or not. Or if you're not sure, you're like, hey, would this one work? We'll absolutely look it up. And let's talk about a little bit about what the best times to plant are.
Yeah. So, spring. Everyone loves the flowers coming up at spring.
Mm-hmm.
So for perennials like creeping phlox, a late spring, April to May, is ideal. It's one of the frost risk, when the frost risk has passed.
Which is usually April. So if you're planting anything that frost is a key element, it's usually going to be sometime April, and I would say normally mid to late April if it's going to be April.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you are going to have frost issues.
You still
so if
run
it's an
a
annual,
risk.
yeah. So if it's an annual plant, now that's what's really nice about the daffodils and the tulips that you can plant at a different time. We'll talk about those in a minute. But they will come up earlier than that. The daffodils come up in March, which is awesome. I think that's amazing.
As soon as the snow melts and
pretty much they're poking their heads
comes
up.
out, they start coming up.
So they're very they're very frost tolerant because of the bulbs and things. But if you're planting an annual that does have risk, frost risk, then you want to wait until April to put them in the ground. It doesn't mean though that you can't start planting the seeds ahead of time.
No.
So you can start planting the seeds in March to get your seedlings ready and then put them into the ground 4 to 6 weeks later. So absolutely. But you want to make sure that frost risk is gone. So if we're having a really cold winter and it seems to be going on and on and on, well, you don't want to plant them then.
Yeah. And pansies can go in as soon as the soil can be worked. So
as soon as you can turn that
even
soil.
with some frost risk.
Yep, absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. Of course, you've got summer blooming plants as well. These are my favorites, like the roses that automatically bloom and hydrangeas. They start blooming in June and July and August. They pretty much come into full bloom throughout the whole of the summer. And of course, then you can also have flowers like lilies and marigolds. They actually should be planted in the summer. The marigolds are definitely a summery plant. Those should go in June, and quite frankly, some years it's probably mid-June.
Yeah.
Because it should be absolutely hot and sunny for marigolds. But we do get hot and sunny here in June.
We do, yeah.
Yeah, so absolutely. Marigolds, lilies, usually mid to late May for the lilies is fine. And that gives them enough time to establish before it gets really hot in August. So, absolutely.
And then we get round to fall. Obviously, fall planting, late summer to early fall, August to September, is perfect for many perennials.
Yep. Your hydrangeas are still going to be doing really well even in the fall.
Yeah, putting in bulbs like lilies, tulips, daffodils.
And putting in your bushes, like your rose bushes, your lily bushes, your not lily bushes, your lily bulbs, your tulips, your daffodils. If you want to do lilacs, if you want to plant lilac bushes, you should plant them in the fall, and then they will start blooming themselves in the spring. Lilacs are very, very popular here in Wisconsin, especially in the lower part here.
Mini irises.
Yep, the little tiny, because there's these little tiny irises. I think they're irises that they come up in the spring, and we eventually mow them over, but they're actually, for us, they were already here in our lawn.
Yeah.
And they come up with the first bits of grass, and it's really kind of cool. I always try to wait for them to die off before I cut the grass first, because They're really pretty.
They are pretty.
And they kind of had this wildflower effect where they're kind of sprinkled throughout all of our grass. And our neighbor has it too. So I don't know if it's from seeds, because I'm not really the gardening type. Even though I know this stuff, I don't really like to do it. So, yeah. So those, but they benefit from having a period of cold. Like the tulips, you have to put them in the fall if you want them to come up. And the daffodils, the same. They have to be cold, cold, cold. Now, there is a cheat code for that. Do you know the cheat code?
The USDA codes.
No. Nope. It's a cheat code for tulips. If you didn't get your tulips in the fall, and you want to have your tulips come up right after it starts to get, like, the frost is gone, here's a cheat code. Put your bulbs in the freezer for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And then pull them out and plant them just before they should be starting to grow, just before it warms up. Like in the coldest part of spring, plant them right then and there.
So they imagine they've gone through the winter. And now
they
it's
think
time
they've
to
gone through the
grow.
winter, and now they think it's not growing because they're not in the freezer anymore.
Ah.
Isn't that a cool cheat code?
Yeah.
I learned that when I was younger, partly because I love tulips. They are my favorite flower.
Yeah.
So
I've actually been to Holland to see the bulb fields out there, and it is amazing when all you can see, as far as the eye can see, is just tulips.
yeah.
All the
I should
different
give them
colours.
I should give them another tip from Holland that is great if you are planting tulips. If you want to have your tulips come up for a much longer period of time, you plant some of them very deep, then plant others on top of them, and then others on top. Plant them in layers. So basically put one like 2 feet down, then put a little soil in, then put a second one on top of it, put more soil in, another one. Keep doing that. So putting like about 2 inches of soil between each one of them. And what that will do is that tulip that's way 2 feet down, it will eventually push itself all the way up and bloom, but it will take it a long time to do it. And this is what they do in Holland to keep the tulips blooming for like 2 full months.
Yeah.
Because it's like basically the first blooms come up, then the next set up, and then they die off, and the next set comes up, and then the next. Oh, I think it's the most clever thing I had ever
They're
heard.
beautiful, and there's some of the colours that they've got that they
Absolutely.
because they've
But we have a very similar
between them.
very similar climate to Holland as far as our wet springs and things like that, and the cold or not cold. So that is why they do so well. And daffodils the same here in this area. Now, I've never heard anybody say that that's what they do with daffodils, that whole planting them at different levels. But I wonder.
Layering.
I might want to try that some year because I love daffodils. I would love them to come up for longer and longer.
Tulips and daffodils.
And daffodils, yeah. But I'm saying I might try that with either one. So that could be interesting.
Yeah.
So we are in, just so you guys know, our zones that are rated for Wisconsin we are zones 3 to 5. Now 3 is up north. So there are certain things you can still plant daffodils and tulips and things like that. And you can still do crocuses and irises and things along that nature, but they will come up later. They will come up in May or June.
Yeah.
So some of what we would call spring here in the Racine area, up north where my parents and my sisters are, it's going to be more like June before some of that stuff comes up. The daffs will come up in April versus we're here, they come up in March. The daffs up north come up in April or May.
Yeah.
Depending on the weather that year. So it is it's a whole month difference, and that makes a big, big difference. But we are zones 3 to 5. So anything that grows in 3 to 5 is going to grow in the Racine area. So that's good to know. Tips to keep it flourishing. Because here in Wisconsin, what are the important things? Well,
soil prep.
Soil. First of all, we have a lot of sand here. So we have a lot of sand. We do not have clay in most areas of Wisconsin. But the other problem we have is rock.
Yeah.
So sometimes you'll dig down and you'll find rock. And that's problematic because you can't plant certain things too deep if you run into rock. So make sure that it's really well draining soil because most of our soil does. So make sure the whole area you want to plant has good draining soil, which means not heavy on the dark soil.
Yeah.
You want to have as much like sand and then soil and sand and soil, a good mix, like a half and half mix.
Yeah, ensure it's well draining
Yep.
and enriched with organic matter like compost.
Oh yeah, we compost like crazy here in Wisconsin. loads of it. And in fact, a lot of people, the mulch that they put down is their mulch is a composting type mulch. It's the kind of mulch that breaks itself down and will compost against things. So there's a lot of people who will put mulch around their bushes and things to keep the weeds down so you don't have to weed as much. Watering.
Yeah. Consistent moisture is key.
Now, in the Racine area, that's really not an issue because we get a lot of water here in the spring and summer. So the nice thing is you don't have to water all that much once you're outside.
No. Once the plants are out, we do get enough water throughout the
And that's why the well-draining soil is so important because it's not a lack of water that we usually have.
No.
It's a lack of if the water gets held up, if the water table gets too high. So if you are further out in the county and you're near a lake, though, you do have to be careful about your soil draining. Make sure that you have soil drainage because when you're near one of the small lakes and things, you will find.
Or if you're in a floodplain.
Or if you're in a floodplain or part of your property there's certain plants that just aren't going to work in those areas because the moisture just stays constant and it will rot certain bulbs if it's moisture all the time. You need it to drain some. And then we've already talked about mulching a little bit.
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of different kinds of mulch you can do. And it really depends on what you're looking for.
Yeah, it helps retain that moisture and regulate the soil temperature.
Yeah. But you know that it depends on what you want mulch for. Do you want it to be the composting mulch? Do you want it to be a certain color because you want it to match with your color design? Because there's loads of different colors. You can get red and brown, and you can get mulch that just looks white and, and stuff. Or you can get stuff that looks really black as well.
Yeah.
The thing that I found that was really interesting that you can buy for gardens is you can buy rubber mulch. That's what they put it in children's playgrounds now because it's softer, but you can still buy it even as a gardener. If you want to put down a tarp and then you put rubber mulch over top of it, it looks like around bushes. Like if you want to keep the weeds down, if your main thing is keeping weeds down around bushes, rubber mulch can be really good for that because it doesn't let anything grow around it outside of what it is.
Cool.
But you want to be careful with it because if it's an area that you want to till up and plant bulbs and flowers in the future, it would be a mess because it could get mixed in with the soil and stop growth. But if what you're trying to do is stop growth, then it works really well.
Good.
So, yeah, absolutely.
So last thing is hardiness. You want plants that are going to thrive in our climate.
And survive our winters if you can.
Yeah.
If it's not an annual, that you obviously have to plant annuals every year anyway, no matter where you are. But if it's not an annual and you want a perennial, you still have to pay attention to which perennials. And like I've mentioned before, I've already mentioned a few of them. Lilacs are one of them. Hydrangeas do really well. Roses, almost every type of roses does well in the Racine, in the southeastern Wisconsin area, Racine, Kenosha, where we are. And
tulips and daffs.
Tulips and daffs and anything like that, they all do really, really well for like bushes and, things of that nature, which is also why blueberries do really well here too. Blueberries and raspberries do very well, and they survive our winters.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people in their gardens who have fruit instead of flowers, or it's kind of like it flowers and then fruits, and they really like that. So we might touch on that a little bit more when we do the one on food gardening, on the gardening type if you want to do food. But we want to make sure what you're planting is going to survive our winter temperatures if it's any kind of perennial. And perennials are extremely popular. In fact, a lot of people we've sold houses to have been a little surprised because all of a sudden come spring, all of a sudden a garden pops up and they didn't plant anything. They bought their house in November and didn't realize that it was, especially so with an estate. We find this a lot when a house is an estate and the people selling it don't really know what mom or dad planted or don't know what aunt or uncle planted before. And they're like, well, we don't really know what kind of gardening there is. And then all of a sudden come spring, poof, all these flowers start popping up.
Yeah.
So we actually tell people, live a year in your house before you start planning a garden plan because you never know what you already have. You might already have a bunch of stuff that will pop up in June or July. You just didn't know it.
Yeah.
So definitely you want to make sure that you wait that first year that you own a house if the owners that you bought it from don't know what's planted there. So absolutely. But I mean, I think that's pretty much it as far as like the flowers that we're going to talk about today, right?
Yeah.
And hopefully you found some value in this content today. So do us a favor.
click like, subscribe, and don't forget to turn that notification bell on so you don't miss any future content.
And we do put out a lot of shorts as well. And the shorts come from our past content. So if you want to be notified when shorts are popping up, absolutely make sure you've subscribed, because you'll get notified on those, and shorts go up daily. Even though this video only goes out weekly, shorts go up daily. So that's kind of cool. That's a lot of fun. So we would like to ask, if you're going to put a comment below, tell us, if you live in the Racine area, what's your favorite flower that you have? Because we've only covered a few of the more hardy varieties. There are literally hundreds of other flowers that people plant in their gardens in this area. So put them in the chat. Let us know and what you love best and why you love that particular plant best for your garden here in Southeast Wisconsin. And thanks for joining us.
And bye for now.
Bye for now.
Yeah. Here we go.